Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Catalyst Conundrum episode number 6. What is communication, and why do we need so much discipline? What is communication, and why do we need so much discipline? So let's start again with the framing thought. Steve Jobs said it. We're living it. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. Keep that in mind. What I'd like you to do is compare all the different conundrums and see where the simple is. So let's read that sentence again together. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. Once you get there, you can move mountains. So let's start off with this picture. Speed limit 65. Boom, you're going too fast. So this is a frame of reference. This is the speed at which most of us relate to. Traffic patterns, maybe some of us are comfortable going up to 60, but if you start really burying the needle, when do you start getting nervous? When do you start feeling your car shake? When do you start worrying about police or other things in your head? When do you think about crashing and dying in a firing wreck? What goes on in your head because you've set the relative speed limit at 65 miles per hour? Now, if you had that frame of reference in your head and you're driving here, aren't you massively dangerous for everybody else? What's the speed that this person's going at? Well over 200, up to 250 miles per hour. So you can see that the different environments and how does it track look, it looks very different. Everything about this is different, yet they're the same, aren't they? It's cars, isn't it? So what I want to do is just highlight something for all of us. If you're comfortable and your frame of reference is a pace of 65 miles an hour, and you know what? That's a limit. It's a speed limit. Maybe you're more comfortable going 55 miles an hour. And suddenly somebody says, you know what? We need to speed up and we need to double what we're doing. So now your frame of reference is the expectations on me is that I have to drive at 130. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay, I recognize that we probably need to move faster because the market, that's what our company wants, blah, 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 blah. But look at your frame of reference. Your frame of reference is you and other people around you like you. What if you were dropped on the NASCAR track or the rather than the winding highways of Arizona? This is what the market speed is. So if the market speed is actually 260 miles an hour and you're comfortable with 65 miles an hour, isn't that going to create a challenge for you? So this is what we're going to talk about, is dealing with the issue of speed, but not directly. We're going to get there and we're going to pay it back out later. But what we're going to do is this episode is brought to you by the word codec. Codec. So what is a codec? It's a device or program that compresses data to enable faster transmission and decompresses received data. Okay, what the heck are you talking about, Santucci? What's going on here? What are we talking about with a codec? Well, our codec, in order for us to move faster and help accelerate transformation, digital transformation, remember, you don't know what digital transformation really is. You've been accustomed to riding on roads with limits and safety and police, and now we're plopping you onto the Autobahn. Or worse, we're plopping you into the middle of a NASCAR race. So our codec to help you do that is to remind you that it's the experience stupid. Lead with yourself. Don't worry about how other people are, driving their cars. If you wreck your car, you're going to wreck everybody else. Being heroic means having the courage to press the pedal. Trust the process. There is a roadmap to get to where we need to get to. It's not the roadmap that you think. So how can you fill in the gaps and help everybody else move along? Because we're all trying to get there at the same time. How do you get to yes quickly? Get to yes yourself, get to yes. Well, this really hasn't been an issue because we haven't created enough conflict. We need to create a lot more conflict so that we can confront a lot of the hidden issues that we all have that prevent us from going 260 miles an hour. Be an orchestrator. We have to just think differently and be able to recognize that it's okay, but that we have to take ownership, more accountability over our things, and pull things together instead of what we think our expectations are. And again, it's about getting it right, not being right. Get it right, not be right. Part of the difficulty of preventing us from getting slides is, you know, I don't know what to do. Just put something down. Iterate, iterate, iterate. Use your team, use your team, use your team. Learn how to use go faster. Just go faster. Okay, so one of the things that I need help on is an information architecture to help us organize the information. You need to tell me what you don't get or what you don't understand or where it is or where that is and the like, because we need to put a lot of effort into how we organize and stage information. One suggestion would be to go through and do your own part to say, how would you reorganize or storyboard each one of these conundrums? I'm doing my best based on how to meet you where you are. How would you reorder the information so that you can take action on? That's something you can do for me. But one of the things that we shared about, and I was hoping to get a lot more questions about what this thing means. I just got, it was deflating that we didn't get good grades. Well, where are these pieces, guys? Come on, we can ask why and where. Let's ask curiosity questions. Let's not take on judgment questions. Let's be curious. This is a complex problem that we're trying to solve together. I need your input. I need your curiosity. I need questions. I need specifics that I can respond to tangibly. We'll get to that in a second. But I want to just review. Value equation fills out box number one. So you're going to see what box number one is a second. Sort of the science of economic theory. I've distilled a whole bunch of work. If you need to know what the work is behind it, you know, ask me. Then there's we talked about helping buyers make decisions in the psychology. Fear. Guess what? This is why we're asking you to lead with you, and it's the experience stupid. Haven't we all experienced fear? Why don't you lead with what your fear is? Because then it won't be fear anymore. Like, can we just connect the dots that we're all humans and we're all part of the same world? Which is a great transition point to sociology. There's a reason that I tell a lot of stories. I tell a lot of stories because I'm focusing on the sociology. You're part of this overall human experiment, the human experience that's been around for the past 5,000 years. And human beings have repeated the same things over and over and over again throughout humanity. This is why I work on history stories. This is why I tell stories. It's to help us with the sociology to build the culture and build the environment that we need. To contribute, you have to be contributing, which means creating slides. Not, I am your client, but I want you creating slides for everybody else. How do you help everybody else figure out what the hell I'm talking about or what's going on? Be humans. Human nature is what's on. How do we create the culture? How do we create a thriving society? Then we go, yeah, guess what? I skipped B. Huh? Interesting. So I'm going up to allocate optimization of resources. Systems thinking is the science. Design thinking is what we've been talking about. That was the topic of the last conundrum. The story diamonds, telling a story, documenting, seeing versus doing, following the approach, design thinking. All of those things are things that we have to unlearn. And did I say unlearn? Where do you think I'm going next? What does knowledge actually mean in the first place? Experiential learning, an example was the backwards bike. Experiential learning is all of the things that we can do to learn from. Let me reiterate what they are. There is the software AG example. How do we learn what you could go there? Ask Brian and interview me. The second example would be the Sales Enablement Society. You have a letter to work backwards from to be curious about how it happened. You can do that. You can plot it out. You can ask questions. You can figure out what that looked like. And you can interview myself, you can interview Brian, and you can interview Walter. There is the Townsend example where you can interview myself, Walter, and uh, and Brian. We can also interview Brooke. We started doing that out. We haven't paid it off. We haven't followed through on that point of inquiry. Why? Don't take that as a judgment. Be curious. Why? Why do we make it okay to stop doing something? Why? This is the whole point of the experience part. If you think about the hero's journey, you have to confront the demons. This is why I try to keep bringing up conflict, conflict, conflict. How many times did Dustin fall off that bike? How many times did he do that? That's the whole metaphor here. He's got to keep doing, got to keep doing, got to keep doing, and questioning yourself and asking questions. The more you get curious about why it's the way it is or why you're getting frustrated and sharing that with your teammates because of the sociological fact or the psychological fact, guess what's going to happen? We're going to accelerate progress. If you make it all about yourself and what your shortcomings are or whatever, then we're not going to get anywhere. It's just that simple. So the main topic that we're going to talk about here, hopefully you were able to see the pattern is, boom, we're going to talk about the value communications or communications theory. So this story starts in 1876, and I hope you know who this is. Look how bored this guy looks. This is pretty funny. I hope you know who this guy is, and I hope you know what's happening here. It's 1876. 11 years removed from the freaking Civil War. Now we're having a phone conversation. This is Alexander Bell having that first phone conversation. Obviously, telephones were so popular. This is what a switching board looked like in the 1940s. Every one of these people here were switchboard operators, and you would call in, and you'd say, who do you want to talk to, and they'd connect you with the switch to get there. Well, if you think about it, this is not only an expensive model, it's going to get too complex with all of the numbers. Think about, manning a manual switchboard operator like this just in New York City alone. So Bell Labs, at the time knew this was a problem. And what they did is they asked these two guys, Shannon and Weaver, to investigate and build some science and innovate and work on it. And they published their findings in 1949 in a book that I've read now twice, actually and I've skimmed it 3 times. And it's a mathematical theory of communications. And in this, they plot out exactly how they did it. Claude Shannon, Warren Weaver wrote this book. And it's completely fascinating. If you buy it, it's inexpensive. I recommend having it in front of you because ultimately this is the business problem that we are addressing, because the value communications process is a process of communication. And I think the more we understand and build on the backs of what other people have produced, the better off we are. So what's in this document? What's in this is actually, so you can see some of the reading, right? The logarithmic measure is most nature to calculate the amount of information for various reasons. Practical, but you can see it's pretty straightforward. I want to highlight out, this is what a communication system is. There's an information source and a transmitter, and that is a message. The information source and transmitter message must be coded into what's a signal. The signal is distributed through a medium, and then there's a received signal on the other end by a receiver, and it gets to the destination. So the message gets through the message, and there's a decoding process. Now, In between, in this medium, there is noise, a noise source. That's all it is. That's what they broke it down into. Now, how they got there, they publish all that. It's fascinating, the work that they did. Like, for example, they investigated drum noises. They even investigated Indian smoke signals because they wanted to find the most efficient form of communications. And then they said, how would we measure that? So today we use the word bytes because these guys invented it because they came up with a number to measure a unit of information. Bet you didn't know that. That's super cool, isn't it? These are things that we can know if we do the tedious work. Okay, now one of the things that's amazing about this book is how prophetic this was. Again, I want to reinforce it was written in 1949. This is how you know it's an amazing body of work. So they identify that there are 3 levels of communication problems. Level 1 is a technical problem. So basically, can we deliver the signal to you? Level 2 is a semantic problem. So these are the questions that they ask. So how accurately can the symbols of communication be transmitted? How precisely do the transmitted symbols convey the desired meaning? That's interesting, right? How effectively does the received meaning affect conduct in the desired way? Now, let's think. So first of all, notice that these are questions and they create curiosity, right? This is the goal. This is, by the way, excellent science, right? Ask a great question. You break the problem down into component parts. So there's a technical one, and then they scope it, define it to where they can address it. Well, let's build on that and talk about each of these different things and how they relate to today. So the technical part, did the message get there? So what that led to was this event. This is 1969. These nerds are doing something for the very first time. You know what it is? They've just sent the very first internet message. That's right. That was in 1969. So DARPA was the first computer network. It was created, by the U.S. government as a way for early detection and connect. By 1969, a few of the universities who were involved in the program got connected, and the very first email message was sent in 1969. Because of this has been the explosion in the internet. All of the coding of the internet, forget about all the layers and everything like that, they go back. What I'd ask you to do is go back and look at Berners-Lee and how influenced he was. He's the guy who wrote HTML, how influenced he was by this book. Okay, now the next one, the semantic level. Is it decipherable? Now let's think about what that core question is in the first place. How precisely do the symbols transmitted convey the desired meaning? Now, fast forward to 2020, and if you look at this list that I just pulled up really quickly, look at all these acronyms. This is the vocabulary of texting, which, by the way, has sort of trickled into all the other, into social media. It's trickled into some email. It's just trickled in everywhere. You have acronym galore. And this creates some questions about whether or not the semantics can get there or not. If you recall the rise of the internet and emailing, and we would have some of these issues, there would be the grammar Nazis, and we have a few of them left over. But really, grammar is part of the whole way of making sure that syntax happens. And really, what people want is the meaning. They want to extract the message out from the signal and the chaff, but what really does message mean in the first place? So then the last one is effect. Does it have the desired effect? Does it have the desired results? For sales and the things that we're trying to communicate with each other, do you take action? And here's the amazing thing, or the really curious thing, is that we think You know, we've set up business models and processes that assume there's demand out there and that somebody's going to take action because we have the best product. And that might be true in certain areas, but do they need salespeople to do that? The issue is that we have to persuade or get people to take action based through persuasion. And that is the value exchange. That's why we need to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing. It's also why we have to take a lot of stock and really ask ourselves, what value are we contributing? That's why I'm really encouraging each of you to go through the operating model and build your own operating model so that you can figure out, when I wear the hat of capability, what service am I providing everybody else? Because I'm in service of people. It's not about what I make and what I think is good. It's about how I service other people. Same thing with Detangler or everything like that. We need to get to take action. Okay, so to do that, I'm gonna play this video real quickly, and I want to see how you relate to it because I'm going back to simple.
Act, chat, in, chin, ick, chick, arm, charm, ease, cheese, act, chat, in, chin, ick, chick, arm, charm, ease, cheese.
So what was this? So what you're doing is you're seeing something from the electric company in the 70s. And what's genius about this is, number one, there's a rhythm. Rhythm creates engagement. It creates action. The other thing is, if you listen to the music it's setting up, but we're also trying to set up, these are people communicating. And what they're doing is they're collaborating together to help you connect your head, connect your little child mind to understand phonics and how to construct words and how to put the right words together. This is the process of learning something as complex as syntax. The genius of how they did it with the rhythm, the music, and everything like that is amazing. Is this a deliverable? Think about what action are they getting the right action? Think about all the communication meaning behind this. So let's move on to a different topic and set that up. Let's imagine those two people together, but now we're fast forwarding to our adult lives, not learning just the phonics and everything, all these things that we've learned about language. What are different examples of how people are going to perceive, like the word cheese? What does that mean? So let's first start with something like this. Why don't we? Think about all the ways that you could process that emotively. Some people take that as positive, like a challenge, like, yeah, why don't we? Let's make the world a better place. Other people can perceive that negatively. What we're doing right now isn't good enough for you? A positive way, I love to be challenged. I'd like to get better. A negative way, what are you calling into question that I'm doing this wrong? A positive way, I'm interpreting what they're meaning is what they're meaning. A negative way, why don't they just tell me what's wrong with me? Why the passive aggressiveness? So there's all these different filters in just a sentence of why don't we, or even why. So there's a whole field of psychology, going back to psychology around this, called CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And it's really matching your thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. The reason that we're bringing that up, emotions, behaviors, those are action words. Thoughts are passive words. So the connections between passive words, feelings, and actions are all mixed together. And that's what psychology is about. Fear makes you freeze up. Thoughts, do you have the right thoughts? How do you get the right clean thinking? Now, keep in mind, our salespeople need to be able to do that. So we on the front line are challenging a lot of existing thoughts. Every time we add challenge existing thoughts, we have to make sure that there's comfort there, that, oh, everything will be okay on the emotions to get the behaviors that we want. That's the adoption part. We overlook how challenging the adoption part is because we think we have that. That's just through training. And it's not true. It's not true. We could have done training on all of the terms that we want and we'd still have difficulty producing outputs. Why? Because of things like this. But there's other things that get in the way too. I like to call this the example of English to English translation. Let's take the word content. We need to be generating content, right? Our clients need to create content. IQVIA has a lot of content. Content. What does it mean? Well, here's an interesting thing about the word content. It's spelled the same way, but if you say content, it means a state of peaceful happiness. When you say content, it means the things that are held or included in something, a list of chapters, the materials dealt with in a speech literary work. So there's a lot of broadness in terms of content, and it doesn't make me content. And this variability here, this wide sloop of things of where I need more precision, doesn't make me very content. Do you see how confusing that is? How would we do the content, content? It sounds the same too, right? How would they even get that meaning around the fence? So this is the example, an example of why things can be so blurry and so confusing. Well, let's expand on that. Let's think about all of the different forms of content that I can use right now with you, communicating with you in a non-face-to-face way. Okay, let's just think about that. I can send pictures like I'm doing right here. I can send links to websites and I can build microsites, lots and lots of microsites or wikis or everything like that. I can ask you to follow my social media. I can send you an email, either dense or simplified. I can send you videos like I'm doing right now. I can ask you to go in, if we had a CRM application, to go in and find the material that I'm looking for here, or ask you to enter in information or something like that. I can provide documents to you that I want you to read. Will you read them? I don't know. I can give you audio recordings. I can leave them on your voicemail, or I can, record a message to you on your email. I can mail you contents. I have no idea how I would mail this this out to you, but I would send you mailing, and generating a document for mailing versus generating a document for publishing is going to be varied. I can send you a text. We can have a video conference. These are all examples. And by the way, note, I'm taking inventory here. How would you take inventory of all of the different forms of communication? What about the formats? These are the reasons why we get paralyzed. We have to lean into all of these different things and recognize, so under websites, what are all the form factors between an intranet site, blah, 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 blah. There's different variations there. What are the rules of having a video conference? What kinds of pictures convey meaning and what don't? Do we create our own infographics? Is that a picture or is that a document? What about social media? How do we use that? Videos, all these different things we are struggling with, because part of the challenge is we have to take inventory and see what we're working with. Now, all of these different factors create noise. So going back to that simple Shannon Weaver document, here's a cleaned up version that somebody else made, I don't know, in the early 2000s. But there's a sender, there's an encoder, there's a channel, and in that channel, there's a lot of noise. Now, the question is, what is the channel of what the communication is? Or do we focus on the encoder, the sender of that information? And who's actually the sender? And what materials are they doing? And are they working on a message? Now, all of these things that I'm asking you to do is that's just the individual interpersonal communication. But do things happen that way? And I'm going to ask you to think about the world around us and let's contrast. By the way, this is criteria. What we're looking at is criteria. And if you can see, having criteria to compare and contrast is really helpful in illuminating. Contrast creates clarity. The reason that we want conflict is conflict allows us to see what we need to contrast so that we can create clarity. So conflict creates the ability to create contrast, which creates clarity. But at any rate, going back to what we're looking at is go to market. A market in upon itself is passive. Go to customer, that's more active. So it's action oriented. Going to market is built on the premise that demand already exists. We need to respond to it. Go to customer, the premise is how do we go act and create demand? Go to market it has a whole bunch of people who are specialized who just say, tell me what to do. Haven't you been in that situation too? Why don't I just tell me what to do? Just tell me, I'm frustrated. Just tell me what to do. And that's part of the gearing of starting at 65 miles per hour. This is the go-to-market model. Go to customer is the stock car, is NASCAR. It's fast, very, very fast, because customers are changing their expectations and incredibly rapidly, way faster than how we can perceive of it, thinking about it riding around the road on I-66. So tell me what to do is the go-to-market world. The go-to-customer world is how do you make it happen? Take ownership, man. Figure it out. We're all here to support you. You have to take initiative. Okay, go-to-market is reactive. We wait till somebody defines something for us. I need this from so-and-so before I can do blah. There's these causal chains built because the perception of go-to-market is a linear model. In go-to-customer, where things are fluid, it is a non-linear model. So we have to be proactive. And we have to be proactive and we have to be able to articulate what it is. Go-to-market is about nouns. Let's observe. Let's talk about structures. Let's talk about things. Let's talk about people as things. Go-to-customer is about verbs. And as you can see, one of the things that I had a great conversation with Dave about the role of architecture is exactly why don't we have verb words associated with architecture? Why are there verb words associated with clarity? How do we figure out what verbs are? Now I'm going to get back to verbs in a second and action, but let's talk about the business problem that we're addressing. Before I talk to this, how does this make you feel? Is this comforting? Is it uncomfortable? Do you not even know where to start looking at it? A huge part of the reason is that's the point. That's the design point. What this art basically says is over here on the left, we're built in a go-to-market way, but customer actions are different. They want outcomes. So these are all things that we've been consistent on. Possible pattern, path, proof. Keep working on this to make it more concrete. Don't just build new things not off of this. The outcome wheel, are we working on building that? How do we help uncover this choke point, this noise in this overall system? Where does the noise come from? It comes from a lot of the patterns and the behaviors that are happening all within this vendor. Do we zoom in and focus on the individual people on the team, the minions who are working at it? How do we layer this out to address this in a series of baby steps that uncover symptoms and create more space to create to solve more problems, to create more space, and so on and so forth. How do we follow a process for that? What does this look like? Separate ways, worlds apart. Customers are going one way, vendors are going in a different way, and this is why we have a choke point, and this is why we have such a bad commercial system. How can you, Tim, help me better visualize this and build many builds on top of this? How do we stay super focused to bring in lots and lots and lots of details that fit where people are coming from so that we have a synthesized view and not just many, many, many different lenses of a linear view? Okay, so going back to that whole idea of noise. Noise is in the system. So what we're trying to do is zoom in on the communications process, one of the three stools. And as you can see over here on the left, the company is fraught with a lot of confusion among the silos because each one of these silos are describing nouns to each other. They're noun polishing. Noun, 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 noun. Let's understand. I need to understand this. I need to be on a meeting on. But at no point in time is this any doing. The only doing is to create more stuff of more nouns so that we do more and more things so that this is what we deliver. This avalanche of stuff and no meaning and no action because the design point is in not this. Effective, effectiveness, 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 take action. It's the whole lack of verbs in the whole narrative. Okay, so part of the difficulty is why do we use nouns to describe things? So there's a lot of nouns here. I try to use words that can also be verbs, like humans. Humans are beings. Human being is a great word because you actually are always in motion. But we want to highlight this out. Now I want to change this. I hate using word seller and buyer. So this is an older version, right? But what I want you to do is just think about, what is this process? So this is a Mobius loop. And in this Mobius loop, you have, how do you plan and equip the salespeople? How do you advise buyers to envision an outcome? How do you plot? How do you guide? How do you design a possible outcome? How do you make this fluid to where a salesperson could do it with an individual customer? And how do we map this out? How do we tease this out? And also, is this the right model? I'd love you guys to do it. But at the end of the day, the whole focal point is, what's this value exchange, which we can measure through the value equation. But what does this exchange process really look at? And that's what we have to get a lot more curious about. First of all, we have to get curious about what value is in the first place. Are you delivering value? Am I delivering value? What does value look like? How do we manifest the value? And then how do we judge whether action has taken place or not? Think about it. It's a tough, tough problem. And the more we lean into that, the more we're going to empathize, because that's the problem this blue dude has with this green guy. It's the same problem. So let's just get over ourselves and recognize that that's what's happening. Okay, so here's another thing when we talk about action. I'm very much inspired, and I tend to not pay attention to traditional quote unquote business best practices because I found that they're fraught with noun polishing. And then the how that people do is basically how to create more noun polishing, how to structure a deliverable so it looks at, but it's just a bunch of nouns. They're going to sit there and not do anything. So there are two fields of science, I could probably add more, that I'm really attracted to. One is kinesiology, and you can see here in the definition, it's the science of human movement. It's really fascinating, actually. It factors in, you could get into diet, you could get into nutrition and, things like that. But also there's physics. I think all of you guys know I love physics, and physics is more or less the study of motion, the study of how things actually work. For me, This is why I think physics is a real science and why I think sociology is not a real science. Sociology is just a bunch of observations. They're using math, but they're not able to predict. So physics is a hard, real science, and like weather is predictions. So they're not a real, in my opinion, not a real science. The science is things that are knowable. Everything else is really just different ways of predicting. Okay, so now we're going to watch another video together because I want us to make sure that we have the same feeling of what action is and what action means.
I did my thing in action.
I did my thing in action. Listen to the energy already, just in the music. See how the music and the rhythm, we've talked about that. Hopefully this is getting your juices going.
To be, to see, to feel, to live.
To be, to see, to feel, to live. To what? We need to always translate the things that we're doing into action because that's our communication goal, is to be effective. If we don't define things in an action, to do what? Measured by how? If we don't do those things, then we don't take action. Verbs, verbs, verbs. We have too much of the words around us that are nouns, that are just descriptors of things. But how do we take action? What does action actually look like? And how do we make it tangible and concrete?
That's what's happening. I put my heart in action. To run, to go, to get, to give.
To get, to give.
That's where I find satisfaction.
That's where I find satisfaction. Taking action.
Yeah. To search, to find, to have, to hold. To be bold. When I
be bold.
Use my imagination. I think, I plot, I plan, I dream.
To use my imagination. I think, I plan, I dream.
Turning in towards creation. I make, I write, I dance.
I make, I write, I dance. Verbs, 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 verbs.
I sing when I'm feeling really active.
When I'm feeling really active.
I run, I swim, I fly. Other times when life is easy. I rest, I sleep, I sit, I lie.
I rest, I sleep, I lie.
That's what's happening. I can take a noun and bend it. Give me a noun.
I can take a noun and bend it.
That's both break and plow.
Make it a verb and really send it.
Show me how.
Oh, I don't know my own power.
Batting. How do we take nouns and turn them into action? We're batting now. We're boating. We're architecting. We're clarifying. We're connecting. We're capabilitying. Whatever it is, how do we turn it into action?
In action, in being, in doing, and saying. A verb expresses action, being or a state of being.
A verb makes a statement.
Yeah, a verb tells it like it is.
A verb tells it like it is. Not what it might be, not what it was, like it is. Verbs. Verbs are the vocabulary of the state of now, not the state of what was, not the state of what might be.
I can tell you when it's happening.
Past, present, future tense.
Tell you more about what's happening.
Say it so it makes some sense.
Oh, I can tell you who is happening.
Verb, you're so intense.
Hey, every sentence has a subject.
Noun, person, place, or thing.
Find that subject, where's the action?
Verb can make a subject sing.
Take a subject, what is it? What's done to it? What does it say?
Take a subject. what's happening? Those are the verbs.
Hey, hey. I can question like, what is it?
What is it?
I can order like, go get it.
Verbs are the vocabulary of being curious. Curiosity requires verbs. Requires, and once you're in the verb form, you're already in the active state to think about doing and putting it and making it effective. What is the vocabulary of getting people to do?
When I hit, I need an object. Ooh, when I see the object.
Do you see that bird ball?
If you can see it, then put the ball on the fence, man. Go ahead on. Yeah, all right. What? He hit it. It's going. It's going. It's going. What? I get my thing in action.
That's what's happening.
I did my thing in action. Verb, that's what's happening.
To work, to play, to live, to love.
Tell me how genius that was. Think about the rhythm. Think about the words behind it, the singing, out all laid out, all the production, just to help us understand what verbs are, what they really mean to us. How does that take action? What action am I going to take? I'm going to learn about verbs. I'm going to use them in my sentences. I'm going to think in verbs because I want to get to stage 3 in communication, be effective, which means I want people to do something with it instead of all these nouns that describe the world around it, which is the semantics part. Ugh. So going back to that, think about what we have to master. So not only do we have a word, content, can mean different things to different people, but a question, why, can be perceived negatively and positively. So we have challenges in what we have to do to structure to what is this experience between one human and the other human about conveying what is value. But then we have, how do we communicate to many, many people? Because I don't have just one person that's going through all that stuff. I have multiple people. And do we get hyper-focused on any one and then we alienate the others? How do we find a message that's among? What's the among message for all of these people based on all the other variables that we've described? Then on top of that, how do we deal with so many conversations happening at the same time and organize all of these things together? Well, the way that we do this, we work backwards from what's simple. So going back to that challenge, that overall, oh my God, go to market, go to customer, that's overwhelming. It is, but it isn't. So one way for us to move from 65 to 260 is to skip a lot of the kind of understanding work that's noun oriented and focus on the actions. The action that we want is revenue. We want to create more revenue for Acuvia. How do we do that? Do we focus on reading their website and doing all that? No. The reason that we're doing all that is we have to document that they're spending way too much time focusing on themselves and figuring out yet another way to talk about what they do. Is that driving revenue, or do we get them to figure out how to put their verbs in action? The actions are what gets us the revenue. How does that revenue happen? It comes from an outcome, something the customer wants, something the capability, something they have, and then a agreement, which is expressed in the form of a contract. Where do you see the verbs? I want, I have, we agree. Oh yeah, verbs in action. This is making the economy grow, man, right here. The action, the action, the action, the action, the action, the action, action, activity, baby. This is what makes it work. This is what makes the engine go. Verbs in action. Okay, so the difficulty is this English to English challenge, how do we help people see that we're so passive with nouns and trying to understand what this thing means and what that thing is and a different way to describe? We're just not focused on the action right here, the synapse point of how to help convey the meaning of what's in between in order to get somebody to take action. Yeah. What is the action? How do you create action? How do you create action? How do you create action? You create action by motivating. You create action by giving somebody something they want. You create action by understanding their environment and giving them a path forward. You create action by giving them what's possible. So what are the elements, the nucleus behind all of that is the outcome. Aren't these the kinds of questions that you can get verbs around? What is the action? We want an achieved end state. Who is going to do it? The executive owner. Who's the subject of the action? How will they do it? That's an action. That's a path. Why are they doing it? It's an action. Measurable results is the way that we provide the noun for it. Where will it happen? Inside the organization, impacted stakeholders. When will it happen? That's the overachieved life cycle. You're going to realize these results over time as these other things happen. It's the happening, happen. What happens, not how to create these things. It's answering these questions so that we can put it into action. The outcome is the action, even though I know outcome is a noun. So this makes it more challenging with our stupid language that we've got, right? So do we say outcoming? I don't know. Maybe we work on a different word here. But this is the atomic level of what we're after. If we can just answer these simple 6 questions and organize them into different chunks, we win. And our clients win, and everybody wins. The economy wins. Everybody has jobs. But if we're focused on the nouns of what is it, no, I don't understand, we're not putting things in action. So here's another way to help look at it. A customer focus means we have to think about conversations or buy-in or stakeholder, success path, wallet owner, outcomes, priorities, vision. This is where do we find this value fog? Now, I just created this in order to help people see what actions they're taking. To see is an action, it's a verb. So part of the whole idea of see slides is to help people take action. One action is to see what they're doing. If they don't see or aren't aware or anything like that, we create this value fog. We need to create the tools to help people to see. To see is a verb in action. And then we have to help them see that their behaviors, the actions that they're taking to create more nouns and more stuff, are the wrong actions because they're taking actions to create nouns, not actions to create verbs. Verbs in action. And they're doing traditional training to teach people what their nouns are. They're building readiness checklists the same way. This by no way, shape, or form is complete. It's worked for me to help illuminate some problems, but if we put more action behind it and more verbs to make it more real, how would we bring this to life more? Because this helps to what? To see, and to see is to act. So, another way to help to see, to help address those communication problems, what I did is I adapted the communications theory, and since the value communications process is a communications process, I built this simple communications model. There is an audience, there are messages you're communicating, there's a messenger that you're communicating through, and then there are interactions, and these interactions happen in a medium. What are all the mediums? Who are all the audiences? Who are the different messengers? What are all the messages? This is the type of structure that we need to be creating an inventory for in order to help what? to help our clients see how the decisions that they're making to make resourcing decisions to go to market are actually creating the noise that's leading to or contributing to the inefficient communication system that results in a low commercial ratio. So now here's the challenge, right? The challenge is immediately this can start getting very complex because of all of the, if we're trying to map out the actions and not just a steady state and recognize that sales is a state of action. It's always ongoing. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody's moving. All these molecules are moving. This is a dynamic environment. It's always changing. It's complex. It's ambiguous. It's uncertain whether or not people are going to do what they do. You never know how people are going to react in an environment with all of this chaos around. You don't know. So you have to map out to increase your odds. You have to map out. So you have to be able to plot out where all the noise is in this system with all these side conversations that happen because most people don't have the discipline to focus on the one thing. Going back to Steve Jobs' job about why is it so important? Why is it so challenging? Just find the one thing. How do you get your thinking clean to see what it is? And you have to sort out and be curious and curious and curious and verb and iterate. It's not about the noun publishing and the static deliverable, because that's only going to get it at one moment in time. It's about the observation of the system and how these things interrelate with each other. This is why you have different roles based on what your backgrounds are, so you can see these things instead of produce moment in time deliverables, which are not valuable. They're actually anti-valuable because they create more and more noise and more stuff. But the box is checked off. So, oh my gosh, we got feedback loops and encode, decode, noise, relationships, interactions, broadcast. This is too hard for me. I don't have a framework to look at it. But don't you? Before we get there, one way to take inventory about all of these different things is to look at an example like this. All of us can take inventories like this. We can look at it from an audience perspective. What classes of capabilities are they looking for? Messengers, what classes of, what are the different messengers? And then, really looking at defining it. How do they need to all be detangled? Do they need to be detangled the same way? How do you detangle a group of people? All of these things are good questions to ask because this is the common challenge that we need to work backwards from. But we do have a way to break it down. And what we are recognizing is that because it's a state of motion, value communication is very much like an electric circuit. This is why I represent these things as black and red. These are the same colors of an electric current. You need both things happening, the positive and the negative, for the light bulb to go off. Why is that so epiphanal? Because the light bulb is representative of possibility, which is action. Light bulb is to act, to light, to enlighten. It is an action type word. And you can see there's we call that a relationship rhythm, because once one end happens and you're not bidirectional, that energy, that current, that value that happens through interaction and through ongoing dialogue, back and forth. Once that breaks, it dims. The light dims, the current dims, and suddenly the light is exhausted. And there is no light out there. There is no momentum. There's just blah, blah. So if you look at this, there's a different currents. There is a current with customers. There's a current in the environment and a current in the system. Now, I would love work on each of these things because I've really worked to simplify this. This is valuable information. So how do you take all of these things together and put them in an outcome? So the outcome wheel is a thing to turn these nouns into action. Oh yeah, to act, to outcome, to communicate, right? That's what these things all allow us to do, because we're encoding it into a message, yeah, that is valuable to audience and easy for messengers to engage with. Yes, it's a message that's designed to be engaging, not just one-way communicating. Doesn't work that way anymore. You need to have that, but it has to have engagement around it. So I've tried my best to plot these out. Let's see what this looks like. So an enabling service would be focusing on engagement. Compelling conversations might be one. So how do we create empathy, expectations, and a feedback loop among the different salespeople, managers, salespeople, managers? Like, how would we plot out who's in the system and who's out? We'd have to design that. And then who's the agreement network? How do we have the engagement and the encoding? How would we encode the information? How would we factor in relationship rhythms? How would we train these messengers on what this is and supply them with the right kind of engaging tools? How would we understand what the expectations here are on this side? How do we measure the feedback loop? And how do we create empathy for these parts, for all of these gears to be connected? So this is about engagement in this box. Now, this is too generic. I need help fleshing this out. How would you make this slide and make it more concrete? Can you share it with people? How do we build on top of that? How do we take an action? How do we make it an architect? How do we make this clarity? How do we make this detangling? How do we make this capability? How do we make this concept? Oh yeah, action. Compelling conversations is what I try to do, is because it's action. I want to take action. Okay, the next bucket is, how do we figure out the environment? And this is what I'm concentrating on: processes. How do we define the processes to make this work? So this one is the French fries guy. How do I flip the French fries? What is the process of the French fries in terms of the overall Speedy system? What's the environment? So I call this predictive processes. How do we take a step back and look at the process? So the process is, do we figure out what kind of talent that we've got? The process is, are we organizing the right information? Do we have this, the right feedback loop? And then how do we build on that from what we've learned here? How do we build on that? Now, is this complete? I don't think so. But I think it's good enough to take action, and that you guys could flesh out more of this stuff. So the enabling services is the environment. By the way, this maps to pilot, prototype. This maps to limited run. Interesting, right? It's fascinating how common patterns happen when you're focused on taking action, and how people take action and what they need to take action in. How do they get free from the nouns and embrace the verbs to take action? Then finally, the enabling service is, how do we design the overall system, the ecosystem? So how do we know what the customer outcomes are? Those are knowable. How do we stay tuned on what customers are thinking and what they know? How do we make sure that this feedback loop happens? And then also, how do we know what's valuable? What is value in the first place? Now, again, I'm very open to these things. These are just working labels so that we can, it's working, right? Working is an action. They only become a verb if you take action and build on top of this model, which will allow us to go faster. In order for us to keep making more things to help create more insight and more buy-in for Jen, so that she gives us more money, action, momentum, building on top of things. I'm not much of a great singer, but I'm trying really hard to keep the action. And this is how everything fits together: engagement, environment, ecosystem. I like ease, the 3 E's of enabling service. That would be what we would talk to Jen about. Then we highlight these out as how you build this is prototype. This is prepare, and this is scale. So these are all things, and then we can break this down into the different um, uh, types of enablement. That's a different topic altogether. The point is, we have enough to know that you can build from, use the things that we've got, and how do you help me help you get the information you need so that you can take an action. When you build this out, we've shared this in some of our webinars, right? This is what we're talking about, is contact to contract. What is this? Contact is an action. We want to help salespeople create actions. What are the 5 sales objectives? They are actions. What is the contracting phase is an action, an outcome. Contact to contract is an action. This is a process to drive action. And these are all the variables around that we have to factor in this process. So this box here fits within this boundary and this box. So the whole idea here is, what are the variables outside of why you're not getting the action you want or the results that you want, because you're not designing and factoring in all of the different variables that create noise in this process, which is the communication process that we talked about earlier on. This is how we get to the answer. Something as simple like this is you model. Our approach is to model out the agreement network of customers, map what that process is, what the right message is. So we have to define what message is, because people think that they know what the message is. Match how sellers, and we should say salespeople, add value. Over here, how do we manage it? Model, map, match, manage, put it in the right rhythms. And then this is your new system. And then how do you build it out? So how you fix it out is you fix it, you fix the system is how you get the most results. You have a broken system. And sales and marketing are part of a business process to develop economically valuable relationships. That happens with action, 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 action. That's why we're defining these things as rhythms. So model the customer, map your capabilities to a possible outcome, match skills, talent, and buyer patterns. So what can you do about it? How can you take some action? Going back full circle to the word Kodak. What is the Kodak? What is our secret decoder pin? Our secret decoder pin are these 7 principles. Now, to remind us of what the 7 principles are, I hope you are using them, have them printed out, and remind yourself. But let's recognize the environment around us is VUCA. VUCA is a term to describe the environmental forces disrupting the status quo. I can't wait for Walter's work that's going to build this out more and make it more accessible. But we still have to work with something, because we have to be taking action, not understanding, not looking at other things, not finding the nouns. We need to be taking action, not looking at the VUCA video, which has waves and bees and trees and, dots. Like, those are abstractions, not actions. So these environments are complex, and they impact complex human-based systems. So going back to sociology, why do I keep leading with stories that impact society or that are historical? Because I'm reinforcing that human beings have been there before. The whole VUCA problem with the Bronze Age collapse and the connections there, these has all happened before. We can learn from the mistakes of others so that we can take action right now, and the right actions, the right movements, the right activities by learning from the past, instead of just repeating what people know for sure. That's very empowering, but we've got economy, societies, geopolitics, industries, systems, processes, all of these things to learn from. But VUCA impacts the economy, business systems, teams, and individuals. So let's talk about you. We're all here in this state. I don't know what to do. I feel like I might be letting him down. Blah, 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 blah. All of those things, I guess you could call them action. I don't think they're actions. They're just feelings. And they're not taking action. Take action, take your ball in the court. You should be able to see things and build things to make things more clear. The more we're doing, the more they're clear for everybody. But we're human beings and we have been wired to think in terms of nouns and stuff and passivity, and somebody else will figure it out. So the other thing to think about is, oh my God, I can't do this. This is too hard. There's too much information. It's going too fast. I'm not doing it right. Oh my God, how the hell? I've never driven 130 miles per hour over. I got to get to 130 miles per hour first before I can go to 260. Why are we at 260 now? Oh my God, this isn't doable. So the whole point is, in order to overcome this isn't the approach. This isn't it at all. If this is your thinking, stop it, because this is not transformation. It's this. How do we go to 65 to 260? And when you ask that question, you free yourself up more. What stands in the way of going faster? It forces you to ask questions that allow you to expand the limits. But when you think this way, you're already limited. And guess what? When you start going 130 and you're proud of yourself, you're still getting lapped by the competition, because you're no longer out there on that nice I-66 winding road. You've been plopped in the middle of a NASCAR loop. You're in Bristol. So this is the world we're in. This is VUCA. Relax, accept it, deal with it. Or, don't deal with it. And, those are your choices. Deal with it or don't deal with it. I say deal with it, take action, because it's not as hard as you think it is. The thing that's hard is you're probably thinking this, or the self-limiting thoughts, or not following the Kodak enough to go faster. So volatility, how do I keep up? Well, just react to videos. That's how you keep up. If you think about it and worry in your head about how the videos are, instead of just reacting of, here's how I'm reacting to this at this moment in time, at this specific piece part. If you just react to the video, I can get what you're reacting to and I can take more action. You have taken an action, which is to react to the video. Giving me an analysis of some other nouns that you've done is not taking action. It's doing stuff, but it's not taking action in the direction that we need to make. Or if videos is too hard for you to do, take notes while this is happening and then share. And if you don't want to share them with me because you're worried about it, share them with somebody else. But taking it in them on yourself, or noting them, share it with yourself from your previous self to your past self. Keep a journal, something. But you have to share your observations, or you're not going to see your deltas. But always, always, always leverage something before. Use messenger audience all the time. Use the outcome wheel all the time. Find things that have been vetted, and then find things that haven't been vetted. If you don't know, say, I don't know. And then say, how do I create a model for how we don't know? And then we figure it out. Maybe we need to create a microsite that has vetted tools to leverage and non-vetted tools to leverage. If they're non-vetted, then help me vet it, because that's a way to take action. Okay, uncertainty. I need to know where we're going. Well, we're just going so fast, right? So here's something. There is no way of knowing if your slides or the things or things that you do can help unless you put them into action and are really working hard to focus on the one thing. So if you're all over the place and you're trying to get people to, how come you're not getting people to adopt it? It's like, well, what is the thing that you're trying to do? Are you getting feedback? Are you doing the encoding and decoding that's going to allow people to take action? Or are you talking about nouns? There's a whole shit ton of nouns. Discipline helps a lot. Follow the process. Be disciplined. It's actually fun. Complexity. I don't see how I fit into everything. Architectures. help you digest actionable things that combat complexity. Therefore, we need to design ones or follow ones that exist. So if you're struggling to figure something out, make a little architecture for it. Make sure then that does it plug into other architectures that we've got? How do we connect the dots with them? Do they all fit together? Do they fall through, flow through together? If you're uncomfortable making frameworks, you need to leverage the frameworks that we do have. If you don't know what those are, start with messenger audience. Start with the framework of the process of going back and asking the right question, getting feedback and going through that. I need help creating more gates. I need help to understand or articulate what a gated process is. I need help to frame a lot of the process steps out to make them more clear and more followable. I need help there. So that's one way you can take action. Help Scott by making your understanding of what it looks like so he can take an action, which is to react, so that we can collaborate, which is an action, so that we can build a shared understanding, which is an action that everybody can take action against, and explain our actions, explain what happened, how we were feeling, what we were doing, what the moment in time was, so that we can help bring to life the situation. Okay, ambiguity. I don't know what to do. There's lots of things to do. If you're thinking about nouns, you need a structure and a linear process. But the surest way to overcome ambiguity is to engage. How in the world if we started describing about how to hit a baseball, you'd never hit a baseball, ever. You got to just go out there and say, let's try to hit a baseball. And then let's work on it together. Or take a golf swing. Let's talk incessantly about all the vocabulary that we could use to describe a golf bug, the golf thing, and we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but we're never going to know out there until we get out there and whiff our first our tee shot, or make that first connection and it feel really good, but watch that sucker hook 270 degrees the wrong way. All of those things, then we have to figure out, now I need to understand, why did that thing curve that way? Why? Instead of just saying, well, I hit it, I did what you told me to do, coach. I mean, it's ridiculous, but we do that in business all the time. It's just, it's nuts. So we have to just change the environment that we're working in. Fear of failure doesn't work in the prototype stage because no one has enough context. You can wait and wait and wait to understand and understand. It's going to move too quickly because we're going at 260 miles an hour, not 65. You got to get in behind the wheel, and as scary it is, hit the gas at some point in time and then roll into it. You have to. And then you're going to realize that wasn't so hard. The fear is in your head. So these are the kinds of things that we need to think about. So what goes on in our heads is that it's not about us. It's about creating all the tools that we require to help everybody within InQvia to take action. It's the ability to take action is what people are buying. But yet the frame of reference of the deliverables are not in an actionable format. We have to help people see that first so that they can then appreciate and understand what we're providing. So the tip, if you try to understand everything around you, everything around all of these different things before you start doing or taking action, you will never catch up to the pace of the race. You can only get ahead by doing and failing forward fast. That's it. I mean, this is as simple as it can be. I don't know how much more we can do to stress this so that we prevent this the cycle that we're in with InQvia from happening again. This is where I need your help. How can we take action in the past, and what could we have done better in the past? What other things could we have added to make things more clear? This is where you filling in the holes helps a lot. It helps everybody move faster to take action, not to understand. If you have in your head, I need to make things, I have to understand something. How are you taking action? What are you doing right now? Why aren't you taking action? If you just write down why I'm not taking action, guess what you've done? You've tricked your brain that says I can't take action by taking action yourself. And that's a huge part of the problem. That's CBT, baby. That's taking action. So remember, to summarize what we're talking about, we do have a value communications model. It's based on a boatload of science. And that our job is to shift out of the 65 miles per hour and the 130 and leverage the framework that we've got and recognize that we're building a scaffolding. And what's going to be revealed outside of the scaffolding is the 250, is the 230. But in order to do that, we need to lay down what is actually happening behind the scenes in the scaffolding. These are knowable things. I take action. I don't know how to help people get on board if we're thinking about nouns. How do we create the vocabulary that we require to communicate ourselves? These are knowable things. One way to create action would be software AG. What's the start time? What's the end time? What does that look like? And just do that one thing. Sales Enablement Society. Guys, I promise you, you're not going to hear the end of the Sales Enablement Society until we get this done. So one way to shut me up is to do it. The OmniTrack second day, what was the start time? What was the end time? What was the scope? What are the questions that we can ask? How do we describe the environment, the process, an exercise? What actually does change mean, or how actually does change happen is really what we should do. These are all things that were in states of completion. Completion is a noun. It's not an action. How do we turn it into an action? An action would be completed, the completion process, what was completed and what were the results. So these are things that we can do. Or if we're more comfortable, we can take action by understanding how to take action. What did Dustin do? He took action by learning how to ride a backwards bike. It took him 8 months. This guy, the other guy, I don't know, forget his name is, he took action by taking on his challenge. It required him to initiate the challenge. He already knew what was possible. So he wanted to show it's possible to not do it in 8 weeks. This is a phenomenally awesome feedback loop. How do we build on that? How do we take action and build on top of it? So just as a reminder, let's go back through. So here's what we covered. We covered that we got to go fast. We have to go from 65 and not think about, oh my God, we've got to double our speed. How in the world do we respond to the speed of the market? So hopefully you guys can see the speed of IQVIA. How are we getting ahead of that? And this is why is the gap between my team and you? So we started out more on the same page and running faster than where Jen was. What's happened now where Jen, Matt and I are running faster than where our team is? How did that happen? How do we get curious about it? How do we fix that? We do that by recognizing we have to work at market speed, not our pace. And that we have to do the kinds of things that we do, which happens on a daily basis. We created a codec. Our codec that we've created for ourselves is the 7 principles. We covered off and said, hey, look, we've got, I mentioned these in another conundrum. We have these seven different parts. And we know the value equation. We know about fear and the fear factors that are a subset of the value equation that we can build out and use, and we can use over and 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 over to take action against. We talked about human nature a lot, and a lot of that we talked about in terms of the communications theory and all the details that I share with it. But again, a lot of that is it the words? Is it the communication theory, or is it the sociology? Don't know. There's a nice rubber meets the road thing to figure out, but we talk about human nature all the time. There's the design thinking payout and backwards bike about experiential learning, and our main topic of value communication. We talked about the underpinnings of the mathematical theory of communication. We talked about what the science of that actually is, that there's 3 different parts that these guys called out. The geniuses of 1949 called out that there's 3 different parts, and they said they can't really do anything about that. Well, here's where we are. The effectiveness of communication, the desired effect, is totally broken, which is easily measurable by the commercial ratio. We talked about how effectiveness is the desired effect is about getting people to take action. What is the action that we want people to take? We want the action to be a contract. So how do we break that down into little tinier actions? We talked about the ease, cheese, and how hard communication is, and why we have to be talking and being humans about it. Because the meaning of words and just sending documents alone isn't going to cut it, and we need to learn how to do it. Why? Because we're overloaded with so many different forms of information that no one structure today works. That's why there is nothing that I can do better unless we come up with a different strategy. There's nothing Brian can do better, or Walter can do better, or Phil can do better, until we address the fact that some of us are going to want to communicate in pictures. Some of us are, really like to talk and have dialogue and engagement, conflict. Some of us are comfortable watching videos, or good in text, or want to see documents, or want to work in applications, or comfortable in social media or video or email. It's so much. Is this what we need to be doing? Is this omni-channel and having all these different channels and outposts and everything like that? Or is it really just noise? And noise for what? It's all examples to not focus on the things required to take action. And if you can see, we've been set up to be passive. We've been set up to talk about nouns. We've been set up to be reactive and tell me what to do and respond to demand. All of these things are really sort of like enslavement and disempowerment. Go to customer is about taking action, and action and accountability go hand to hand, but that's empowering. It's about creating demand. It's about making things happen by taking action. It's about proactivity. It's about verbs. The reason, so then we pay out. This is a broken system. We need to keep working on this so that it becomes more actionable. How do we make it more actionable? We keep being curious. How do people react to it? How do people respond to it? What actions does this take? What emotions does it make? Does it allow people to see? Let's build out the to see to where they can take the next action, which is, what's the next action that we want? Are we curious about that? Are we mapping it out? Can we put it down and put it on paper and then keep cabbing action, 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 action? Because we're about eliminating the noise and helping people understand how to take action and how action actually happens. And it's not as simple, and it's continuous. We can't look at this in a static world anymore. We have to look at this as a moving world. And there's many tools that we can use available for us. We can think. Kinesiology is the study of moving things. Physics definitely studies moving things, and moving is a verb. So that's why I'd love to know what you guys think about just this video. I love it so much. I'd like us to create some little videos that are like that help people take an action. What prevents people from taking actions? Well, we have the interpersonal communication thing to think about. We have the one-to-many and what an among message is, and how we're going to get these groups of people to take action. And then how do we figure out actions when so many different conversations are going on? How do we find the patterns in all of these different conversations in order to pull it together? The way that we do it is to concentrate on revenue, to zoom in on this whole issue about value communications, which is verbs. How do we articulate verbs and lead with verbs? And most things that we do, we're comfortable starting out with the nouns, the descriptor, not the action. And this is a big block, the English to English translation. We have the atomic element, Questions create action. We need to be asking questions because they create action. Action leads to the next action, leads to the next action. In a movie, when they're recording a movie, what do they say when they want the scene to start? Do they say act? No, they say action. Action. A verb. Do. Everybody do now. Not scene. That's what they say at the end. Scene's over. Stop. We need to have tools to help people see more. We have this model here to describe the overall environment. We have different ways to create different zoom ins. We can have labels. So this customer's path, this customer current is something that we can map out. That's a reference architecture. The environment reference architecture we can map out. The systems environment we can knock out. But if we start at the systems thing, it's too abstract. If we start down here without knowing that it's going to click here and here, it's not scalable. It's not repeatable. That's why we do pilot, engagement, compelling conversations, limited production run. What are the processes in order to make the engagement happen? And then finally, the ecosystem. How do we design the speedy system with which to make it come to life? How would we build on these kinds of things? How would we adapt it and make it work? How do we leverage the work that's already been done instead of constantly trying to reinvent the wheel? So those are all things that we talked about. We said, how do you put this into action? You put this into action by observing the principles. So let's close it out on our principles. 1, it's the experience stupid. One thing to practice on is what is your experience like when you watch this video? That's a practice. It's the experience stupid. What's happening? Lead with you. Don't worry about quote unquote what the team thinks or worry about what I think. Tell me what you think. How are you reacting to it? Be heroic. Have the courage to do it. Trust the process. This is how things work. We're not going to get there on your approach because it's not going to work. Get to yes, we're skipping. We're not having enough conflict to where that's a problem. We need to be an orchestrator. What does that mean? That's something that we have to keep challenging ourselves. Why? Because it's about getting it right, not being right. When we worry about ourselves too much, we worry about whether or not I can go this fast. When we concentrate on getting it right, oh my God, I didn't realize suddenly now we're going 260 miles per hour. That is today's conundrum. How do you go 260?